You ever have that moment where your brain just decides to take a vacation without telling you? That was me last Thursday, standing in my kitchen with a cup of coffee that was way too bitter even for my taste, scrolling through my phone while my cat, Mr. Whiskers, sat perched on the counter like a tiny furry HR officer judging my every move. My boss had sent one of those quick check-in texts, and my brain, fueled by sleep deprivation, caffeine, and maybe just a sprinkle of self-destructiveness, thought it would be hilarious to respond with sarcasm, brutal honesty, and passive-aggressive venting I had been bottling up for weeks. I typed, paused, reread, giggled to myself, and hit send without a second thought. Then, the sinking feeling hit me like a ton of bricks. My stomach dropped, my palms got sweaty, and I prayed the Wi-Fi would somehow eat the message before it reached her spoiler. It didn't. The text read, "Wow, thanks for actually noticing me today, boss. I was beginning to think you only existed to ruin my mood." Immediately, I realized I had sent it to the wrong person, my boss instead of my friend. Panic set in instantly, my inner monologue doing cartwheels I didn't even know it could perform. Oh no, she's going to fire me. No, she's laughing. Maybe HR will see it and my career is over. Wait, do people actually get sued for texting bosses like this? I texted my friend immediately. OMG, I accidentally texted my boss that she ruins my mood. Her reply? Lol, girl, are you dead yet? Not yet, but my soul had definitely left my body. For the next 10 minutes, I hovered by the kitchen counter, frozen, my cat judging silently, my coffee forgotten and now cold, waiting for the inevitable. And then it happened. Her reply popped up on my screen. "I knew you had a sense of humor. Don't worry about it." What? That was it? No subtle thread about professionalism, no HR documentation, no long lecture? Just amusement. I blinked at the screen like a deer in headlights, tried to process this unexpected mercy, and immediately started imagining all the ways it could still blow up in my face. Annual reviews, awkward office parties, LinkedIn recommendations. The possibilities were endless and terrifying. Standing there, I realized that human communication is a chaotic gamble, and I had just rolled snake eyes. Except my boss found it funny. Over the next few days, I lived in a state of paranoid excitement. Every Slack ping, every email notification, every passing glance from my boss felt like a potential sequel to my accidental text disaster. Coffee runs became treacherous missions. Did she notice I drank her fancy latte without permission? Meetings were minefields of awkward potential. Did I overshare? Did I fidget too much? Did she see my internal meltdown? And yet, she seemed to delight in it. Tiny references, smirks, memes, and casual jokes about missent messages turned my professional life into a sitcom where I was simultaneously the protagonist and the comic relief. My coworkers teased me mercilessly, but with good humor. "You're officially the office comedian now," they said, which was accurate but also horrifying. Flashbacks to other small disasters flooded my mind. The time I replied, "Me too," to a sad mass email, spilling coffee on reports and blaming the paper, texting the wrong person at 2 a.m. about my existential dread, and countless minor slip-ups that had seemed catastrophic in the moment. Standing in my kitchen one night, recounting all of this to Mr. Whiskers, who looked at me like, "Yes, you really are this ridiculous." I realized adulting is basically surviving your own chaos. Mistakes are inevitable, People rarely remember them the way you do, and humor can sometimes save the day. My boss, apparently, had enjoyed my accidental honesty. A revelation that both relieved me and filled me with a lingering dread about how she might remember it in the future. The following week, life at work turned into a series of subtle comedic beats. Every minor blunder became an opportunity for humor. Slack pings made me jump, but also taught me resilience. Meetings became practice in controlled panic and forced wit. The cat continued to judge all of it, as if offering silent commentary on my life choices. I started to notice patterns in the chaos. My boss would occasionally reference my bold text in tiny, harmless ways. A casual smirk, a coffee in hand with a wink, a meme in Slack, each time reinforcing that my accidental honesty had, bizarrely, improved her perception of me. At home, I would replay these events in my head, laughing nervously and texting my friend for reassurance. Level: text your boss and pray. Her reply was always the same. I think that's called life, babe. And she was right. Standing there, I also realized that adulting isn't about never making mistakes. It's about surviving them, and sometimes, if you're lucky, turning them into memorable, even endearing moments. Yet the anxiety persisted, because my brain is stubborn, and it kept imagining every possible future scenario in which this one missend could haunt me forever. Performance reviews, office parties, promotions, HR records, LinkedIn anecdotes, endless hypotheticals of doom. But intertwined with that anxiety was an unexpected thrill, the kind you get when life temporarily becomes a sitcom starring yourself. By midweek, I had internalized several life lessons. First, caffeine makes you impulsive and sometimes dangerous. Second, mistakes are less lethal than your brain tells you. Third, the people who seem terrifying can sometimes be unexpectedly human and even amused by your chaos. And fourth, chaos is survivable, especially if you learn to laugh at yourself. I continued to survive in my office sitcom, dodging minor disasters, laughing at my own awkwardness, and marveling at the strange way one tiny text had dominated my week. My cat remained the silent, judging companion in this theater of panic and comedy, occasionally leaping on the counter to knock over my coffee and remind me that life is impermanent and messy. In one particularly tense morning, I found myself in the break room staring at the leftover donuts like a contestant in a survival game, calculating the exact moment it would be safe to grab one without triggering an accidental comment about diet sabotage that might get logged in the office gossip database. When my boss walked in carrying her usual meticulously prepared latte, glanced at me with a knowing smile, and casually remarked, "Don't let the donuts scare you." I froze, a donut halfway to my mouth, and realized that she had now fully adopted the role of subtle tormentor-cum-amusement architect in my ongoing sitcom, where every phrase, every glance, and every minor interaction could either elevate my panic or strangely endear me further to her. An office version of being constantly evaluated by some kind of cruel, caffeine-fueled oracle of professional judgment. My mind raced with potential responses, ranging from polite laughter to an awkward chuckle that would betray my inner terror, ultimately settling on a meek thanks that sounded like a question, but at least kept me alive for another day. Mr. Whiskers, of course, watched the whole ordeal from the top of the counter, his feline gaze dripping judgment and mockery, as if silently noting, "Yes, you are indeed ridiculous, but I will continue to judge anyway." The Slack messages that week became their own source of tension and entertainment, Each ping made my heart jump, each emoji a subtle riddle of interpretation. Was her thumbs up a casual acknowledgement or a hidden critique? Did the winking face mean she found me endearingly clumsy or dangerously unpredictable? I spent entire afternoons drafting imaginary apologies for things I hadn't yet done, rehearsing them in front of the office mirror, and then deleting them with shaky hands, convinced that each thought was a potential career-ending disaster waiting to happen. And yet, despite the anxiety, there was an undeniable thrill in surviving each day, a delicate dance between panic and amusement, humiliation and relief, chaos and oddly satisfying human connection. By the way, if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit subscribe. Trust me, the rest of my disasters are even crazier, and you won't want to miss it. It was in these moments that I realized adulting, at least in the professional realm, is less about perfection and more about surviving your own unpredictable impulses, while somehow maintaining the illusion of competence. By midweek, I found myself reflecting on all the small, ridiculous disasters that had led up to this point, each one a tiny rehearsal for the great accidental text fiasco. From spilling coffee on reports to sending passive-aggressive emojis to friends at inappropriate hours, my life was a chain of minor catastrophes, culminating in one spectacularly public embarrassment that I had somehow survived, and that survival had transformed into a bizarre badge of honor. My coworkers whispered, smiled, or shook their heads knowingly whenever I walked by. And while I initially interpreted every glance as a silent indictment, I began to recognize a subtle pattern of camaraderie, humor, and shared human absurdity. It was as if my clumsy honesty had cracked the facade of rigid professionalism in a way that allowed everyone, including my boss, to see me as a person, a flawed, anxious, occasionally hilarious human being navigating the corporate landscape with the grace of a cat walking on a slippery floor, or, in my case, Mr. Whiskers, the feline embodiment of judgment. Late that week, I found myself recounting these events to my cat while sipping a now cold cup of coffee. Reflecting on the chaos that had become my life, I laughed at the absurdity of it all. The panic, the overanalysis, the mini heart attacks at every notification, the imagined worst-case scenarios that never came to pass. I realized that these moments, while terrifying in the instant, were teaching me resilience, humor, and the importance of not taking myself too seriously. Even the recurring references my boss made, the casual memes, the sly comments, the subtle glances, became part of the narrative that defined my week, transforming potential humiliation into shared amusement, a quiet acknowledgement that I was human, fallible, and capable of surviving ridiculous mistakes with my sanity mostly intact. Standing there in my kitchen, recounting the events to Mr. Whiskers as if delivering a live confession, I understood something essential. Mistakes are inevitable, and the way we respond to them often defines their impact more than the mistakes themselves. Humor, honesty, and the willingness to endure embarrassment can transform potentially career-threatening blunders into opportunities for connection, growth, and self-reflection. The accidental text that had initially felt like a personal apocalypse had, in retrospect, become a lesson in surviving chaos, embracing imperfection, and finding amusement in life's unpredictability. Adulting, I realized, is less about flawless execution and more about navigating the absurdity of existence with grace, laughter, and a healthy dose of self-deprecation, while also acknowledging that a judgmental cat may be the only truly reliable witness to your daily disasters. And so, As the week drew to a close, I stood in my kitchen, coffee in hand, reflecting on the strange, humorous, and anxiety riddled journey of surviving my own impulsive text, the subtle theater of office life, and the chaos of adult existence. I understood that life will continue to throw minor catastrophes, unexpected embarrassments, and surreal interactions our way, but with humor, perspective, and the courage to laugh at ourselves, even the most mortifying moments can be transformed into stories worth telling. I also knew, with the quiet certainty that only comes from living through a personal calamity and surviving, that my accidental text, ridiculous, impulsive, and terrifying as it had been, had in some inexplicable way improved my connection with my boss, made my coworkers smile, and taught me that chaos, mistakes, and minor disasters are not just survivable, but when embraced with humor and honesty, sometimes even transformative. And as Mr. Whiskers jumped down from his perch to stroll across the countertop with a dismissive flick of his tail, I laughed, realizing that the world had not ended. My career had not imploded, and I was, against all odds, still standing, still laughing, still fully capable of turning my most cringe-worthy mistakes into stories of survival, self-reflection, and absurdly relatable human experience.